Of seats. So thanks very much again for joining, guys. It's been absolutely wonderful, and we will see you. I'm sure I'll see you again on the Sunset Safari. So have a fantastic time with Jamie for this last hour, and we'll see you later. Here we go. Move all my paraphernalia. Well, good luck, Jamie.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jamie, and as Brent has already told you, I'm here to do my interview drive. I'm hoping to join the Wild Earth team. I don't have the same level of experience as some of the other presenters, but I'm hoping to bring something fresh and new, and hopefully to learn from some of these amazing guys, because it's been an incredible morning so far. I've really enjoyed myself. Spectacular sighting of the leopard, Tangata, nice big dominant male, and then a sort of very rapid drive to see the Styx Pride, which was an also very special sighting with very serene family scene with nice new cubs. So we're just going to make our way around a little bit, but before we do that, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Johannesburg, and I grew up visiting the bush and loving the bush, and it is my passion and my life. I spent 3 years in the UK at university. I studied law, decided it really wasn't for me, and that I wanted to come back and enjoy the bush again. So I hope you enjoy having me. Please be kind to me, guys. I'm new, don't know the roads, don't know the reserve, don't know the animals, but hopefully I can give you a good drive. Just bear with me a second, I just need to get my earpiece in. Okay, let's hit the road and see what we can find. I think what we're going to do is slowly make our way around. Oh, we've got a nice herd of zebra coming down to drink. All right, which you'll often see with animals. What you'll often see with animals coming down to drink is they can actually take a very long time in approaching a dam. And that's for a very clear reason. They need to make sure that there's no predators about. As you saw when we first approached that lion pride, they were also hanging out around the dam waiting to see what was coming down to drink. So you'll see that they approach very, very cautiously, often using as much cover as possible and walking into the wind so they can smell what's around them. Okay, we've got a nice brave starter. What they'll also do is be very cautious when they approach, just in case there's a crocodile lurking in the depths of the water. The rest of the herd is feeling a little bit cautious, but we've got two brave drinkers. Here we go. So typically a herd like this, the family structure would usually be the dominant stallion and his group of mares that he's selected. So when a young stallion is starting out in life and he wants to collect his females, he'll go and fight another stallion. And if that stallion loses, then they'll pass on either the daughter or his least favorite mare. And I read a very interesting article recently that the females obviously have a hierarchy. So the newest female will be the one that is lowest ranking in the herd. And often the existing females, when a new female comes into the herd, can be very unfriendly and antisocial for a while. And that female must walk at the back and learn her place until she's accepted by the herd. And often when you see zebras with stumpy tails, missing tails, I always used to think when I was a child that was from a sort of surviving zebra that had escaped from a lion or a hyena hunt. But actually, typically, that comes from the zebras biting each other, especially when they fight. Their main form of offense is a combination of teeth and kicking. And they have some very impressive incisors that they use to bite. So since you guys are new to me, I want to test a little bit on your knowledge from some of the existing viewers. Please, can you answer this question for me? How do you tell the difference between a male and a female zebra? Okay, it's one of the more tricky ones to do. And you can send through your answers either on questions@wildearth.tv. My first time on Sabi Sands. The reserve I work at is not that far away. It's probably about 2 hours drive, but much closer in a straight line. And it's amazing. It's one of these incredible privileges of being a guide and doing the work that we do, is that you get to see so many incredible places and experience such different things. Just looking now, this reserve is much more open than our reserve, the reserve that I'm currently working at. And that's actually because the reserve I'm currently at has only just become a reserve in the last 20 or so years. So it's been overgrazed. The environment is very, very different, and they have to help the land recover from the damage that was done by the farming. So it's very interesting to experience different places and see different trees. And it's amazing to see how even familiar trees to the same species, they actually look totally different. They have totally different growth forms. And obviously that's to do with the soil and the climate and everything like that, the level of rainfall. It's just, it's always impressive to see how everything's connected and ties in together. It's one of my favorite things about experiencing new places, and I've been very fortunate to have traveled quite extensively in South Africa. But to me, there's nothing like the Lowveld. Towards the lions. I wanted to give you guys a little bit more background on where I come from and what I've been doing up until now. I actually spent a year in the Kalahari before I went to university. Oh, for a nice buffalo. Okay, hold that thought. I just want to see if this boy comes out, if he relaxes a little bit now that we've stopped the car. He's just hiding there behind the buffalo thorn. No, don't think he wants to come out and say hi. Got a nice lone buffalo bull here. The regulars will know that we actually refer to them here in South Africa as dugger boys or dugger boys. The lone males that often wander away from the herds and spend their time wallowing in the mud. All right, he looks pretty placid now. Buffalo are some of the most dangerous animals in the bush, especially these old males. They can be pretty grumpy when they want to be, and they often surprise you when you're out walking. He's nice and peaceful. He's decided he actually can't be bothered really to chew that mouthful. He's just going to hold it there for a while. I recently had a very interesting buffalo experience, and probably my most exciting buffalo sighting to date, where I happened to see that a female was in the process of giving birth. Now, typically, female buffalo will actually take themselves off somewhere when they're ready to have their babies, and they hide away. And I actually saw the reason for this fairly recently. When her water broke and she started to give birth, she actually lay down. She was obviously struggling quite hard. And one of the other young females came to investigate. Now, I don't know the exact reason for this. I think it was probably a combination of the smell or something like that. But when she smelt the water and smelt the female, she got very overexcited and actually started ramming her horns into the pregnant female and pushing her up onto her feet and then chasing her around. And while this was all happening, one of the big males tried to get in between. I don't know whether it was out of a sense of concern or just to see what was going on. And then by the end of it, I actually had the whole herd, it was a herd of about 23-odd buffalo, chasing this one poor female round and round and round the car. I actually had to keep tapping the car just to remind them that I was there. They were so frenzied and distracted. And apparently this is something that happens. It's sort of an overexcitement that occurs when the buffalo get hold of the scent of the pheromones and the hormones that are coming through with a pregnant female. And that's actually one of the reasons that the female will take themselves off into a nice thick bush on their own. You'd be happy to know, though, that we went back the next morning and the female was there with her calf. The calf was alive and fine. They just stayed separate from the herd for a couple of weeks. So a happy ending to a very interesting buffalo sighting. Okay. See you later. Nice fresh dung. Rick and Susie in Hawaii have asked, hi guys, nice to have you. Welcome to the Sunrise Drive. And you've asked if there are any dung beetles around at this time of year, or if they're predominantly around season. All right, I haven't seen any dung beetles for about a month, well, especially from where I'm from. They do typically tend to only come out during the rainy season. And what we've noticed, particularly this year, where in the area that I'm from, and I'm assuming similar to this area as well, is a huge drop in dung beetle numbers, just because there's been so little rain. We've had a very, very dry season, and it obviously hasn't been favourable to the dung beetles. So we had a couple of population explosions, but other than that, very few dung beetles flying around, and they usually are. So yes, typically summer, rainy season, you'll get a lot of dung beetles around, and you'll see that the dung piles that are deposited will be removed and flattened a lot faster. And it makes aging dung that you see in the road a bit more tricky, because you have to then take into account the season and the amount of dung beetles around to flatten it out. Because they can make really quick work of that job. They could convert a pile of elephant dung, rolls of elephant dung, and flatten it in very rapidly, in about an hour, if there's enough of them around. By reversing and then going forward, but sometimes it's a little bit more stubborn. Thank you, Andrew.
Pleasure.
So a very typical view of lions at this time of day. I always find it interesting when you read articles and books or you watch documentaries, the sort of typical documentaries on lions. And they always give off this image that during the heat of the day, the lions will be in the shade sleeping. And whilst that's definitely true and often the case, I've also had a fantastic experience and a very enjoyable one where I learned a great deal, where I spent 12 weeks following one particular lion pride every morning and every afternoon. And that typically meant that we were out much later during the day. And we were able to see that actually, even during the hottest times of the day, from June all the way to September, where it can reach well over 30 degrees, even if it's just spring, that they will actually get up, if they see the opportunity, they will actually get up and hunt, even if it's really hot and they're really full. It's just because lions are instinctive. They're opportunistic hunters. If they see the opportunity, they will go for it. And in that pride in particular, there was a young female who was just reaching adulthood, and she was pushing to learn how to hunt and provide for the pride. So she was actually typically getting up and starting the hunts. And what we saw earlier with these guys was that female picking up on the impala and going into sort of stalk mode, trying to creep around with the little babies following behind and essentially messing up the hunt. And this is actually something that I've seen happen quite a few times with lion cubs. As they get a little bit older, then they start to learn that what they should do when their mom goes into that mode is just lie down in the grass. And once you start to see that happen, it's amazing how the lions can communicate with each other almost soundlessly. It's just that everybody knows exactly what to do. Every pride member knows what their job is and what their place is without having to talk to each other in the way that we would have to. And And of course, it's a combination of body language and clues picked up from behavior, and then of course practice as well, and instinct. Flat cat. Okay, really nice view of this male. Okay, so we've got a very good question from Elizabeth from Minneapolis. And she was asking if there's any difference between a way that a male cub and a female cub are treated in the pride. Elizabeth, not so much in the beginning, all right? So the cubs as young as the ones that we're seeing, sort of 3 months up to 6 months, they'll be treated all equally. They'll have equal access to suckling depending on their size. Obviously, the bigger ones will be able to fight for the better position and the most milk. But when they start getting older, what you'll actually see is a difference in behavior between the male and the female cubs. All right, the males tend to be a little bit more adventurous, a bit more into exploring and seeing their world, and a little bit more precocious. So they'll often be the ones that initiate the play with the adults. All right, and then as they grow older, you'll start to see that the males tend to go more and more towards the peripheries of the pride. Because as you know, once they reach sexual maturity, once they sort of hit 2 to 3 years old, they're actually going to be pushed away from the pride. And that's a biological thing. It's to prevent them from being able to breed with their mothers or their sisters or their daughters. So what they'll do is the females and the older males will actually push them out of the pride. And it'll start slowly and gradually, just with distancing. The males will the big males, the dominant males, they're probably their fathers, will put them in their place more often, push them away from kills, and eventually their instinct kicks in and they go off on their own. Okay. So, I don't think these two gentlemen are going to move anywhere. What I would like to do is see if I can reposition just so that we can get another view of the females and the cubs. All right, so just bear with me as I find a way around the bushes so I don't drive too close to them. I really don't, even if these lions are perfectly relaxed around vehicles, directly approaching and squeezing around next to them is not an ideal way to guide. It's not ethical. We're in their space, not the other way around. Okay, Mom's had enough. Wants a little bit of space. Guys, thank you for the updates and for filling me in on the Matimba males. I believe it was Ellen and Purple Flower. Hi guys, welcome to the Sunset Drive. Sunrise Drive. Still in the morning. Thank you for filling me in on a little bit of the Matimba males history. Apparently there are 5. Voice in my ear tells me it was Morning Glory. Thank you. Apparently there are 5 Matimba males, for those of you who are like me and aren't sure, and these 2 are the ginger male and hairy belly. So thanks for that, guys. Thanks for that update. Christine from Austin, Texas. Big hello, and thank you for your question. Christine asked me if I have a favorite predator and what it would be. It's a very difficult one to answer. I've always had a soft spot for wild dogs, but I also really, really enjoy spotted hyenas. I mean, I know that they have quite a bad reputation in some circles as being dirty scavengers, but they're actually one of the most effective hunters that we have in South Africa. And their social structure and hierarchy is completely fascinating just because it's so different, being the only really true matriarchal animal grouping. So I think if I had to pick, it's a difficult decision, but if I had to pick, I'd probably say spotted hyena. I also always enjoy a nice spotted hyena cub sighting, so they tend to be very curious and very inquisitive, coming up right up to the car and having a look and exploring, usually with their teeth. But they are wonderful to watch and always entertaining. Thank you for your question. Little cub making his way to mommy. See if he can get a bit more food. We have a question from Penny Pine about whether or not these cubs are too big for their mom to pick up or whether they could still be carried away from danger by her. Penny Pine, they are still small enough that she could very easily pick them up. And there's a typical reflex amongst small puppies and small cubs and kittens that when they're picked up by the back of their neck or the scruff by the loose skin, they actually go limp and relax, right, as a way of aiding their mothers in carrying them and transporting them away from danger. All right, typically, this won't be her approach in this case unless she only had one cub, just because she needs to be around to protect the others, and there's no way that she could pick up all of them at this point. So what she'll probably do, as was discussed a little bit earlier, is she'll probably actually take an offensive approach rather than trying to rush away and hide the cubs. Here you can see nice and clearly that she is the mom. Wonderful time playing over there. His tail. Okay. So you'll see that these guys are still young enough to have their spots. And that's evolution helping them out again. All right. The spots and the dappled coloring when they're young like this will help them to camouflage and to hide when their mom is not around to protect them. And those spots will actually, you'll still see them. I've still seen them on 2-year-old lions. It takes a while for them to actually disappear. Oh, isn't that cute? If you can, have a look at the light stripe that's under the eye, where the fur is actually very, very light. And that's very typical of nocturnal hunters, nocturnal predators. So things like lions and leopards, they have that beautiful highlight under their eyes, and it's just a way of making the most of the light that they have at night. So it will actually help to bounce the light in the same way that white reflects. Any light color will reflect the light. It actually helps to bounce extra light into the eye and allow them to see better at night. All right. Lions can see as well as night as we can see during the day. Incredibly good night vision. And then if you look at something that is more of a daytime predator, so a diurnal predator, something like a cheetah, they've actually almost got the opposite effect. So those dark tear marks that run down their face, the black stripes down each side of their nose, that's actually a way of preventing glare and helping them out when they're hunting. In the same way that, say, sportsmen will put on their dark stripes underneath their eyes. So very interesting how nature has found a way to help the animals out. Very sweet. Climbing over mom. Okay, we have a question from Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Welcome to the Sunrise Safari. Nancy wants to know how old these cubs are. Obviously, I don't have an exact age for you, given that I don't work here, but I would say roughly around 3 months, from what I understand, and just judging by their size. All right, any much younger than this, and the mom actually keeps them hidden for quite a long time. You only start seeing lion cubs properly, typically around sort of 2 months old, when she starts bringing them out into the open. So yeah, these guys are roughly 3 months old. Very, very small still. It always amazes me how fast baby animals grow. And that's largely due to the fact that animal milk, especially things like predator milk, is incredibly nutritious. Very high in protein. It's got everything that they need to grow big and strong very quickly. And the difference from 3 months to 6 months in lion cubs is tremendous. So Dan in Philly has a question for us. He wants to know what age the cubs will start eating meat. All right, I've seen cubs at sort of 6 months old actually start to investigate carcasses. But even these cubs now, if the females kill something, they'll go and have a look at the meat. They probably won't eat any of it. They're still too young and they're still too reliant on their mother's milk. But I've seen them around 6 months old start to chew on meat, start to have a look at, investigate the leftovers from their parents' meals. And from then on, they'll start to wean slowly off the milk and more onto purely meat-based. It's very important for the females to actually get the cubs weaned as quickly as possible, because milk production for any animal is actually quite a strenuous activity, especially if you're living from meal to meal. So she wants to be able to get the cubs moving and eating the same diet as they are as quickly as possible so that her body can save its resources. Trying to escape again. He's not going to let her. The one's been distracted by a stick. starting to move, settle down again. Hey, we have a question from Ray. Welcome to the Sunrise Drive. They ask if there's a reason that the two cubs have been playing almost exclusively with each other and that the third is sort of being a little bit separate from all of the action and kind of keeping to itself, and whether or not this cub is actually the runt. I wouldn't say so. There doesn't seem to be much size difference between the cubs. It could be that you're seeing a difference in gender just early. It's very difficult to actually determine what gender these cubs are at the moment, just because they're so small and they don't really present the opportunity to determine what they are. But it could be that we've got two males and a female, and that the female is just keeping away, just from the slightly boisterous brothers. But it could also just be that that cub is not in the mood to play like that at the moment and will be up for it later. I'm just going to reposition slightly just so that we've got a better view.
Just getting a different view.
Lots of questions about the clicking noise. Just to fill you guys in, it's just cameras, big cameras on the car next to us. Some other guests are also enjoying this amazing sighting with us. So that's what the clicking sound is. David from the UK has asked a very interesting question about male to female ratio in lions. And he was saying that you often get the impression that there are far more females than there are males. And he was asking whether or not this is because the males are more dispersed and if it is really just a 50-50 ratio. David, as far as I know, typically it will be a birth of 50-50. Genetics generally goes towards that. There's not much in the way of sex selection before birth. But what you will find is that male cubs will tend to have a higher mortality rate than the female cubs. All right, that's because they're often, when they reach sort of, if they've made it to 2 to 3 years old and they're starting to disperse, if a bigger male or a bigger coalition of bigger males comes across that male, they will actually fight and potentially kill them. So you do find that nature selects for a greater number of females. And that makes sense in terms of the idea behind what species want, and species just want to propagate. Essentially, they move towards ensuring the survival of the species. So if you have more females, it only takes a small number of males to fertilize those females. But the more females you have, the more babies you can have. Very good question. Okay, if we're nice and quiet, we can actually hear them. Okay, really nice, comfortable, happy family scene. The sounds that you're hearing from the cubs is a combination of play, and then also they're begging. They are actually begging mom to let them suckle. And you'll see that it's very common with most animals. I don't know if there were any viewers who were watching the sunset drive last night, but we saw the same thing with the hyena cub, also making a very whiny sound, trying to beg. And lots of animals will do that. All of the animals will do that. And then when you see them start to suckle, what they'll do is they actually stimulate the mother's milk production. So for those of you with domestic cats, when you see your cat kneading with their paws, all right, that's instinctive, and it's a comfort thing when they're comfortable with you. And it stems back from when they're kittens and when they were actually stimulating their mom to produce the milk. And that happens with all animals. I've seen buffalo do it there, and it's actually, you start to feel a bit sorry for the poor mother because they'll actually headbutt. And when their horns are coming in at sort of 6 months, you can imagine it's not that pleasant. Hi, Katrina. You've asked what animals I would like to see outside of Africa. It's a really good question, and thank you for that. It's also a very difficult one to answer. I've always wanted to see polar bears, just because they're so foreign to me. They're so far outside of my typical experience. As you know, we don't get any bears in Africa or in South Africa, so they're so far outside of my realm of experience that I would just love to see them and experience them. And then I've always wanted to see whales. Some of the big whales, something like a blue whale or a southern right whale or humpback whale. I've seen them from a distance, but I would love to have a much closer experience. I have so much respect for animals like that. And they've done studies into whales and dolphins, and they have nerve pathways in their brains that only we have, and the great apes have, and that whales and dolphins have. The only animal that we have in South Africa that has the same nerve pathways that's connected to social and emotional development is actually elephants, which is one of my favorite animals to view in the bush. All right, we're just going to let these guys move out, and then hopefully we can take their place, maybe move around these bushes. So we're coming to the end of what has been a fantastic morning, and thank you all for your wishes and warm welcomes. I really appreciate it. Obviously it's something new to me, something different, and you guys have made me feel so welcome. And I honestly cannot think of a better morning that I've had in the bush in a long time. And let me tell you, mornings in the bush are never boring, but this has been a special one. Started off with that wonderful sighting of the big male leopard, and now finishing with these amazing lion cubs. So thank you guys, and thank you again to the staff of Wild Earth. They've made me feel very welcome. It's a very special crew of people, and I'm very grateful to be here. It's been a spectacular experience. So thank you. And we're going to finish off by watching this wonderful Pride of Life.